Okay, I'm Dinesh Advani. I'm from IIT Kharagpur. I belong to the chemical engineering department, and I attended interview process with Procter Gamble and was selected by them. So I'll tell you something about the interview process with them. It all started with an application where I had to fill my complete resume, as well as I had to answer 3 to 4 questions, which were personal experience questions. Were something like, give me an example of a leadership position or an action you took and the impact it created. Those were the type of questions we had to answer, and then there was a psychometric test. Once you clear through this psychometric test as well as this process, you get to write a written test. And this is basically a very elementary written test, quantitative ability, verbal ability, as well as data interpretation. It's so simple, everyone will clear. Okay, so this is not much of a hurdle. And then you're invited for an interview process. Interview process is normally a 2 or 3 stage interview process, and each interview is taken by a panel of 2 people, and all the 3 interviews basically ask you this almost the same set of questions, and these questions fall into the category of personal experience questions. Okay, normally they ask you by they start the interview by asking you to walk you through your resume, where you tell them about very briefly about what you have done and what you are and how will you be an asset to your company in not more than 2 minutes or so. And then they start by asking you questions like, it's a personal experience interview, so they'll ask, tell me about a time when you led a team and of maybe 15 or 20 people and you have produced significant results. Or another question could be, tell me about a time when you were starting a technical project and you had some prior knowledge, and how did you use that prior knowledge and what were the results. So I was instructed to be very focused while I'm answering every question, in the sense that I need to answer these questions in a very specified and fixed format, which is first I tell them about the context of the problem, like what was the responsibility, context of the responsibility. Let me explain you. If I'm supposed to lead a team of 15 people and produce significant results, what was the context? I would say I worked with such and such association or an organization, and this was the context and this was the problem. The responsibility was, say, to get a lot of sponsorship or to do some publicity. So first time make clear what is the context. Okay. Then I tell them about what my approach was. That is the point 2. Approach or the actions I took. What I did, how I did, and why I did. And ultimately I tell them about the results or the impact I had ultimately. So I'll just summarize. My answer basically falls into 3 categories. First I talk about the context, then the approach, and then the results. So there were some 7 to 8 questions asked by both panels. Interview went on till 45 minutes, and they were very, very good listeners, one of the best listeners, these guys, and they allow you to go on and speak about how your approach at length. So I normally spoke for 5 to 7 minutes on every question. So, and ultimately even you get to ask them a couple of questions which I had in my mind already for the company, and even they took their time and answered the questions very nicely. That was all about the interview.
Difficulty level.
Okay, about the difficulty level. Well, since this is a personal experience interview, the only difficulty you could have is you haven't had such an experience before. Maybe they ask you a question, say, tell me about a time when you had an ethical dilemma and how you resolved it. Okay.
Oh.
So when you during the interview process, maybe you think that you haven't been through an ethical dilemma. The only difficulty here is, have you actually been through such a process? Okay. And the second point of difficulty comes to really structure your answer in such a way that the answer becomes very clear to them. Your approach, the results, as well as the difficulty of the problem becomes very clear to them. You're able to communicate them effectively that, well, this was the problem and my solution was something which was innovative. If not innovative, it was something that creates impact. Okay. Because what the kind of people they're looking for, that was your question, right? The kind of people they're looking for. The kind of people looking for are managers who will solve day-to-day problems, operations. We are basically in plants normally, or maybe a sales job. They'll solve day-to-day problems and they will have to lead teams. They'll have to work with them. So doing this involves, if you have a good personal experience saying that I have been through such situations, and you tell them how you handle such situations, what kind of steps do you take. That makes them very clear if the person is ready to handle that type of a situation. So the difficulty level involves at two places, as you said. One, if you have faced such a situation. Two, how do you communicate your how do you communicate your ideas or your answer, the structuring of your answer. And the interview wasn't difficult at all. In fact, it was very simple. Thank you.